Hi, I'm Heather.
And I'm Haley.
And we're the Dunnit Sisters, a Kansas City true crime podcast. On May 11th, 1992, 9 days after her dream wedding, 20-year-old Jennifer Judd was found murdered on her kitchen floor in Baxter Springs, Kansas.
Despite KBI and local police stating occasionally over the years that an arrest may come soon, after 32 years, no one has been charged with her murder. We know very little about Jennifer's activities that day. Justin Judd, Jennifer's husband, left for work that morning at around 6 a.m. Jennifer and Justin had rented a movie from a Baxter Springs video store the night before, and Jennifer was supposed to return the video that day.
A phone call was placed from Jennifer and Justin's duplex at 9:52 a.m. to the home of a family friend who owned a tanning salon. The homeowner's son answered the phone and later told police Jennifer had called to make a tanning appointment for 1 p.m. that day, an appointment that she did not keep.
Jennifer was also scheduled to work at 3 p.m. at the Pitcher Express, a convenience store in Pitcher, Oklahoma, located less than 10 minutes away from her home.
Sometime during the morning of May 11th, Jennifer was murdered. Her estimated time of death was 10:30 a.m. Unfortunately, the medical examiner who arrived at the scene didn't take Jennifer's internal body temperature, which means her time of death may have been off by a couple of hours. Jennifer's husband Justin and his friend Chuck Chance arrived at the duplex just after 2:30 p.m. There was no sign of forced entry and nothing had been stolen. The movie Jennifer was supposed to return was found on the bed, and an orange Minute Maid soda can was found tipped over on the bedroom floor. No viable prints were found on the can. Her car keys were found on the floor between the kitchen and living room entryway. Jennifer was found dead in the kitchen, her body between the stove and kitchen bar. She was lying on her back, the carpet beneath her saturated with her blood. She had completely bled out. A small amount of blood was found on the lower cabinets near her body and on the wall near the phone. On the other side of the kitchen near the fridge, wedding presents still in their boxes were stacked against the wall, waiting to be unpacked and put away. A small amount of blood was found on the wall near those boxes. 2 knives were missing from the knife block set located on the counter next to the sink.
A butter knife with something that looked like mayo was found lying across a cup in the kitchen sink. Jennifer had gotten an insulated cooler for Justin to use to take his lunch to work in. That cooler, along with Jennifer's purse containing cash, was found in the kitchen. Near her body was a muddy footprint. Jennifer's car was found in its usual parking place near the front door. Inside were found her wedding album, scrapbook and guest book, a box of cards, her Bible, a red jacket, and 2 cellophane bags with a sandwich, fruit, and an unopened can of Minute Maid. No viable fingerprints were found on the baggies or can.
By the time Jennifer's mom had been notified of Jennifer's death and had arrived at the duplex shortly after 3 p.m., there were 15 to 20 people filing in and out of the duplex. None of them were wearing gloves or protective shoe coverings. In the small community of Baxter Springs, news spread fast that a real-life murder like the ones typically seen on TV had occurred, and law enforcement, who weren't even on duty that day, had come out to see for themselves. Jennifer's family was heartbroken when they saw the smiles on those officers' faces. According to her autopsy report, there was no sign of sexual assault, and she was fully clothed and wearing earrings and her wedding bands. Jennifer had been hit 2 times on her face, on the bridge of her nose and next to her left eye. Jennifer had 3 very small abrasions, 1 millimeter in size, on the back of her left hand, the only possible sign of self-defense. She had 2 half-inch bruises on the back of her left shoulder, a 2 3/4-inch bruise on the back of her right upper shoulder, and a bruise 8 1/4 inches long along her upper back. These bruises all happened prior to her death. On the left side, at the back of her head, was a 5-inch circular abrasion, which caused bleeding between her brain and scalp. However, this head injury would not have caused her death. After she was beaten, she was stabbed 3 times in the back by the chef's knife from her own knife block set, which had been a wedding present. One of those stab wounds completely dissected her heart, and she died within minutes. The 8-inch blade of the chef's knife was found embedded in her upper back, the handle broken off. That handle has never been found. Jennifer was then rolled onto her back, and she was left to bleed out. However, the murder didn't stop there. At some point, and we don't have a clear answer to the exact timing, despite asking two independent medical examiners, another knife was taken from the knife block set, and Jennifer was stabbed 6 more times on her front left side. The stabs were in a vertical row and fractured each rib beneath. One of those stabs punctured her left lung completely through front to back. She had not been strangled, and there were no wounds to the bottom half of her body.
In the words of one medical examiner, it's obvious that this was an attack or an overkill by someone who hated or despised this lady.
This is Jennifer's story.
We never met her, however, over the past 17 months, we've gotten to know her through memories and stories shared to us by her best friends and family members. Jennifer's sister, Amanda.
You mentioned on the phone that you wanted people to know who she was. Did you want to tell us your version of Jennifer?
We grew up very, very close. My mom had 2 brothers that had children, and we all grew up as brother and sister, really more than cousins. And same with my dad's side of the family. And I think it's one of those, her family values and her faith were very strong. And she was just family oriented. Her friendship, I would think, some of the people, if you talk to them, she was a very loyal friend. Her friendships with people, just the amount of people, even like when we went through that process of going through the visitation and, everything was kind of a blur, but just the people that responded, and came to pay their respects. And even, years down the road, I think it's a testament to really kind of, who she was. And, the Jennifer that everybody knew that grew up at Pitcher and graduated from Pitcher versus the Jennifer that for 9 days, became a Judd. And I think it's just important for folks out there to understand that, there was a lot of things that was put out to make her into just a light they tried to shine on her and say things that we know that weren't true.
Mark Garrett, a retired police officer turned private investigator, was hired by Jennifer's family to investigate Jennifer's case. Everything investigator Garrett obtained was turned in to law enforcement. We will disclose that Garrett is Jennifer's mom's cousin.
And we love him. I mean, we wouldn't be where we're at today. I mean, the case probably would have been closed if it weren't for Mark. I mean, he's done some incredible things.
On the day that I got down there, my cousin, Debbie, Jennifer's mother, unless you've been around women who have lost children, she was letting out these wails that I'll never, ever forget. And that's what pushes me on today, 32 years later. She said, please find out who killed my baby. Well, I've been working this case from day one. It's been 32 years, and I have massive amounts of information. And I done it just like I would have done any other criminal investigation or homicide investigation. I have written, signed, sworn statements from witnesses that I interviewed, and like I said, it's a massive amount of information. But let me tell you, they have everything that I have. They got a copy of.
After viewing the evidence shown to us, there were times we felt like the Who Killed Jennifer Judd podcast and Jennifer's murder were 2 separate cases.
Any little thing and any little phrases or things that's said that I know that are not appropriate or not fair to Jennifer, I don't want to say it makes me mad. I really try not to let that be something that overtakes me, but you take all of these things, and now years later, and you take things that people are saying, and there just was such a level, I feel like, of disrespect from my parents that and really disrespect for Kaylani and I as well, and for my family, because there just were things painted and things said that we know that aren't true. And it really didn't, I just appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to tell a completely different story. And like I said, I shared earlier, I mean, she can say what she wants to say about reaching out to Jennifer's family. And if she thought that just, handpicking a few people that, claim to be Jennifer's closest, bestest friends, satisfied that, then we'll just let her think that. But there's just a lot of things out there that I think we've been made aware, even more so, I would say here in the last year. And I do think that there's more. I just know that my Facebook Messenger has been a lot more busy over the last year than it has been probably over the last 10 years. And I'm hearing from people that were friends with Jennifer that I haven't heard from in 30 years. And I think there's this concentrated effort for really people to know that just things that people say and things that people throw out there. I mean, I don't know what the end result is for the other party, whether it's, to try to make money off of this or whatever. But I know for us, the end result is to make sure that we portray her and we do what we can do to bring her justice, and for people to know that she's not who others have made her out to be. She just made a really bad decision. She got married and she shouldn't have, and it cost her life.
We want to make this perfectly clear. No relationship is perfect. Couples fight, couples make up, couples complain about their problems. With that said, the picture we have of Jennifer and Justin's relationship given to us from her best friends and family is completely different than what was stated on the podcast Who Killed Jennifer Judd.
Jennifer and Justin were high school sweethearts. So it kind of started in the beginning of high school for Jennifer. And they dated pretty much all through high school.
Even in high school, Jennifer said she was going to marry Justin one day. Jennifer's best friends would tell you that he was the love of her life. They would also tell you that they didn't like him. Jennifer and Justin fought, broke up, and got back together often. Jennifer told them he could be aggressive at times, and one friend witnessed him hurting her. He would do things to intentionally get her grounded just so he could go out with his friends. He could be degrading, and when his friends were mean to her, he wouldn't stick up for her.
There was a lot of verbal abuse. I was 15. I just remember thinking, like, I didn't like the way that he was really hard on her emotionally and verbally. I never saw him physically hurt her. I will say that after her death and kind of moving on through life and getting to know some people, that I do believe there was some physical abuse. But we've said for 30 plus years, I actually just had a conversation with mom and dad last night, knowing that I was going to talk with you ladies. And there's a lot of people that know that he wasn't treating her the way he should have been treating her back in those days. But I do think there's a lot of people, 32 years ago, I don't know if they would have been truthful in that answer to that question. But today, I think if that question was asked to a lot of his close friends and her close friends that were around them at that time, I think we would be shocked of how many people would come out and say that there definitely was some levels of abuse that wasn't acceptable.
Jennifer's family and friends described her as a good girl. Jennifer didn't smoke, drink, or do drugs, but Justin was her addiction. Her closest friends all tried to get her away from him, but he had a hold on her.
This is Jennifer's story, and events leading up to her murder need to be shared. Before Justin and Jennifer were married, Justin's mom found them a duplex to rent in Baxter Springs, Kansas. Baxter Springs is located about halfway from where Justin worked, a company called Alco in Riverton, Kansas, and the Pitcher, Oklahoma area where Justin and Jennifer grew up, and where the convenience store Pitcher Express, Jennifer's job, was located. The duplex was located on a dead-end street behind the Baxter Springs City Barn. Jennifer and Justin lived in the north unit. The unit next door was empty. 2 weeks before the wedding, Jennifer told her parents she wanted to call it off. Jennifer's cousin Shauna.
Several weeks before the wedding, Jennifer started expressing second thoughts and fear about marrying Justin to her parents and her family.
A couple of weeks before the wedding, she came into mom and dad one night, and I was gone. I don't remember it, but she came in and told them that she didn't want to marry him anymore because he wasn't the person that she thought he was. And I've asked some of her friends since that time, I'm like, what do you think that meant? I just feel like there were too many times where, maybe it wasn't physical abuse and maybe it wasn't things that people saw, but just the verbal abuse alone. It's troubling that there's just so many of us that look back now and think, man, there was a pattern there, and that maybe you always, which I don't know. I mean, he could have probably beat her, and she probably still maybe would have wanted to marry him because she thought he was the one, but there was something there. She found out something, and I don't know if it was a combination between what she found out that she didn't want to marry him a couple of weeks prior to it. I would say that, years later, looking back, you you would think maybe that, something could have been done if we would have known more. But at that point, honestly, by the time it was said and done, everyone just kind of felt like it was cold feet, and that, she was just nervous. And, a couple days later, she was fine, like nothing had ever happened.
On April 25th, one of Jennifer's best friends went to Jennifer's work. She overheard Jennifer arguing on the phone. When Jennifer hung up, the friend asked Jennifer who she was talking to. Jennifer said she was talking to Justin's mom.
She asked Jennifer, who was that? And she said it was Pam Judd. She said, I'm sick of it. Her having a key, going in and out of that duplex, making Justin's lunch, doing his cleaning up and all that. She said, I told her that's my duties. Quit doing it. And she said, I told Justin to get the key.
Even after they were married, when Jennifer would return home after work or running errands, she would find clothes folded in the laundry basket, items rearranged in the fridge and cupboards. Many people close to Jennifer have told us that this was a major issue.
According to a friend of Jennifer's, Jennifer was frustrated that Justin's mom would not back off in invading their space.
It was a problem. It was I know that, I've tried to have close relationships with the KBI and stay in good communications with them. And there's been a lot of turnover over the years, and great guys, and they've retired. And then there's been some that we wish they would have done more. A gentleman that retired, it's probably been about 20 years ago. I ran into him, and he came into my previous employer. He was in town that day for something else, and somebody had told him that I was there, and he came in and popped in my office that day. And it's still so familiar. And he looked at me that day and he's like, I know you were a lot younger at that time, but looking back, if there was one person that was at odds with Jennifer, if we would say who's the one person that she was not on the same page with at that time in her life, and that would have been Pam Judd. I know that there had been a fight because Pam had a key to the apartment. And I just, looking back, Jennifer didn't really have any enemies. We're a very faith-based family and have been raised in a Christian home with, incredible Christian parents and grandparents. And, I tell my kids even today, we don't hate anybody. And it's hard for me to even say that Jennifer would hate somebody, but her level of dislike for that person would have been extremely high. I think that Jennifer worked in the evenings, and I would say that, probably there was still that, I have a 17-year-old son, and him and I have a very, very close relationship, and we are very good friends. But, he also has a girlfriend, and she's around a lot, and, I give them their space. I would never be that mother that's a hovering, I want him to be happy and to be successful as he gets older. And I don't know that really was something that Pam wanted for Justin. I think she still wanted that control. I think that, there was a lot of things in their life early on. Bobby's not his real dad. And I just think that there was some issues where their relationship was probably a little bit stronger than just a typical mother-son. I mean, I'll probably give them that because of what they'd went through in life. But, that's just part of letting your kid be a kid and be a newlywed and be a husband. And I don't think she was ready for Jennifer to butt into the middle of that relationship.
On May 2nd, 1992, Justin and Jennifer got married.
My mom and I attended her wedding. And so she actually was ecstatic on her wedding day, but the day we got home from the wedding, when we were telling my dad, which is Mark, we were telling him how it went. And one of the standouts pretty much of the wedding was just how happy she was and how unhappy he seemed at the wedding. He was not, it could have been just his personality. We did not know Justin well, but he wasn't, smiling. It just did not seem like he was in the moment whatsoever. And we had commented on that the day when we got back from the wedding.
Actually, they said he did not want to be there, is what they told me. She said it was obvious.
If you look back at the wedding photos, there wasn't a happy, it didn't just, you look at it today, there just really was never, it was kind of more of a, I think she was a little bit probably more wanting to get married at the time than him. If you go back and look at the wedding pictures, there just wasn't a happy time for her. And so Carrie Jane and Geneva both, they were bridesmaids along with myself in the wedding. And I think probably, the three of us probably can relate a little bit more, just because there just wasn't that, it wasn't a happy, everybody didn't leave the church like this was a great thing.
Jennifer and Justin went to Branson for their honeymoon. On their wedding night, Jennifer called her parents crying. This private conversation was between Jennifer and her mother, and she's still not comfortable talking about what was said.
We can't divulge what we learned due to the sensitive nature of the conversation, but we will say this wasn't the first incident.
Jennifer's parents told her they would drive to Branson and bring her home. She told them no, they were returning home the next day and the honeymoon was cut short.
We reached out to two of Jennifer's best friends and asked them if Jennifer told them why the honeymoon was cut short. Jennifer told one friend she was bored, and the other one was told Justin was ready to go home.
Can you imagine coming home early from your honeymoon?
No, I think that you're planning your dream wedding.
Yeah, no,
and you're going off
the best thing, because it's just one-on-one, and you have time to really, I don't know each other, with just each other. You know what I mean? It's like the best time.
On May 6th, as Jennifer was getting ready to leave for work, a man knocked on the duplex door and began rattling the doorknob. She became scared and crouched down under the window, scared the door would come unlocked. That night after work, she drove to her parents' house, and her father followed her home so that she didn't have to enter the duplex alone in the dark.
He continued to do that on the evening she worked. Jennifer told her dad Justin couldn't be bothered to do it himself. Mark.
And I also wanted to touch base on Jennifer the week that she was murdered. Wednesday before she was murdered, her dad, she was so afraid that for some reason, she was so afraid that she wanted her dad to follow her home every night from work to her duplex. Now keep in mind where she worked, and the town picture is only about 15 to 20 miles from where Jennifer's duplex was. So we know for sure that she was scared about something.
I reached out to another one of Jennifer's best friends. In our conversation, I asked her if Jennifer was scared. She answered, yes, she was scared. She was scared of Justin, most of his friends, and family. When we went to Baxter Springs, and
we saw where she lived, where they lived, and it was desolate. And then there was like a wooded area behind, and me being, how old was she again?
20.
I would not have liked to live at a street with a dead end like that, and it probably wasn't very lit up.
No, and then in the business in front,
I would have been scared.
It would been very isolated.
I would have been scared even if someone wasn't rattling the doorknob. That's just how I am. So, especially first time moving out, right?
First time moving out. She'd always lived at home. On May 8th, Justin and his friend Chuck Chance needed to fill Justin and Jennifer's waterbed. Justin couldn't find his house key, and he and Chuck had to crawl through the bedroom window to enter the duplex.
On May 9th, Jennifer stopped by her parents' house to visit her family. Her father asked her how married life was, and Jennifer answered, I hate him. I hate it. He's not the person I thought he was, and I wish I had never married him. Jennifer's dad told her it would get better in time and not to worry about it.
2 days later, she was murdered.
I do know that some of her friends, and actually even some of his high school friends, actually since this last podcast, they've reached out and they've come forward with just some things that they have always lived with, that they were uncertain about, that they, I don't know if they felt like it's something that would help us solve the case, but it's looking back, I think they would agree with us that they know that something wasn't right. It wasn't a typical happy marriage for two people.
We're not detectives. We can't tell you who killed Jennifer Judd. Facts don't change. And when statements change, we need to ask ourselves why. And some of those closest to Jennifer have repeatedly changed their story.
And this is what we know.
On May 14th, 3 days after Jennifer's murder, Jennifer's husband sat down with the police and gave his initial statement. Since that time, he has done quite a few interviews, the latest for the 2024 podcast, Who Killed Jennifer Judd. According to Justin, on the day of Jennifer's murder, he woke up at around 5:30 a.m. He left home at 6 a.m. to drive to his job at Alco Chemical, located in rural Riverton, about a 10-minute drive from the duplex. Justin worked in the guard shack. His job was to log drivers as they entered and exited the gated facility. Jennifer walked him to the front door and locked the door behind him. Justin later stated to a friend of Jennifer's that Jennifer had had a nightmare the night before and she had woken up screaming. Jennifer said she had dreamed someone had tried to kill her. Justin held her until she calmed down. That morning, when Jennifer walked Justin to the door, he turned around and saw a halo over Jennifer's head. Justin thought she looked like an angel. In 1992, in his initial statement, Justin realized he had forgotten his lunch and called Jennifer at 9:30 a.m. and asked her to bring him his lunch. Jennifer asked him what he wanted, and he said a sandwich, an apple, and an orange. In 1998, in an interview with investigator Mark Garrett, Justin said he called Jennifer at 9:30 a.m. Justin was told by Mark that phone records showed that only one call was made from Alco to the duplex, and that was at 6:32 a.m. Justin then stated that is when he called Jennifer. In 2009, in an interview with a newspaper, Justin said he called Jennifer between 8:30 and 9 a.m. 2024, in an interview with the podcast Who Killed Jennifer Judd, Justin called Jennifer from work. He asked her to bring his lunch and ended the call with, "I love you." Jennifer replied, "You're just saying that, so I'll bring your lunch." In 1992, in his initial statement, Justin said Chuck Chance arrived at Justin's work at 11:30 a.m. In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin said Chuck arrived at 9:30 a.m. Justin was asked, if Chuck arrived at 9:30, then how did he kill her? Justin stated he got his times mixed up and Chuck arrived at 11 a.m. The investigator stated Chuck was alibied at a bank and post office at 11:15 and 11:30, and Justin responded, In 1992, in his initial statement, Justin said Chuck had never hung out with Justin at his job before, and Justin thought Chuck showing up like that was strange. Justin stressed in his statement that Chuck was not at Alco looking for a job. He said Chuck was depressed and was having trouble finding a job. Justin told Chuck he had forgotten his lunch and Jennifer was supposed to have brought it between 10 and 10:30, and she was late. Justin told Chuck Jennifer would never have said she'd bring his lunch and not shown up, and maybe she had gone to get estimates on getting her car fixed. In 2024, in the podcast Who Killed Jennifer Judd, Justin added he had worked a rotating schedule and he thought it was odd that Chuck knew that he was even at work. Chuck asked Justin if he wanted to work out after work. Justin thought that was strange because he had seen him a few days earlier. At that time, they had played ball on opposing teams and hadn't gotten along, so he was surprised when Chuck suddenly decided to stop by and hang out for 2.5 hours. However, according to Chuck, he and Justin last saw each other on Friday when Chuck helped Justin fill his waterbed. In 1992, in Justin's initial statement, sometime that afternoon, Justin told Chuck that he was getting hungry. Chuck drove to Riverton to get lunch. When Chuck came back with Justin's lunch, Chuck said he didn't know whether to leave or not. Justin told him to stick around, that he got off work in an hour. In 1998, in Justin's interview with investigator Garrett, Justin was asked if Chuck ever left after arriving at Justin's work. Justin answered, "No. Well, there was something about him getting my lunch since Jennifer hadn't brought it, but I don't know if he did or not." In 1992, in Justin's initial statement, Justin called Jennifer's grandma, her work, and friends to see if anyone had seen Jennifer or knew where she could be. When Justin's shift ended at around 2:30 p.m., he and Chuck drove to Justin's duplex in their separate vehicles. When they arrived, Justin noticed Jennifer's car was parked in the exact same spot as he had parked it the night before. He then stated that he always used his key to get inside, but this particular time, even though he had his key out, he just turned the knob and went in the front door. The first thing Justin noticed were Jennifer's keys lying on the floor. He looked toward the bedroom and noticed the movie she was supposed to return to the video store. He also noticed that the bedspread in the bedroom was wrinkled. He and Chuck went into the kitchen, turned on the light, and found Jennifer lying on the floor. In 1992, in his initial statement, when Justin saw Jennifer lying on the ground, he thought she was joking. But when he saw blood, he thought she had cut herself and had passed out. In 2024, in the podcast Who Killed Jennifer Judd, he thought that because she was bulimic, she had a problem and passed out. Jennifer's friends and family have stated this is a lie. She was absolutely not bulimic, and that's the first time they had ever heard that. In his initial statement, while Justin and Chuck were standing there, Chuck pointed at the knife rack and said, "Look, 2 knives are missing." Chuck touched one of the knives. Justin told him he shouldn't have done that. Justin reached down to feel a pulse and noticed Jennifer was cold and stiff. Justin said to Chuck, "My wife is dead. What do we do?" Then they called 911.
Wait, they did all that? Oh, for 911?
Yeah. In 1992, in his initial statement, when asked if they needed an ambulance, Justin stated no, his wife was dead. In 1998, Justin was asked by investigator Garrett why he had told 911 an ambulance wasn't needed. "Wouldn't you have hoped that maybe she was still alive or could be revived?" And Justin answered, "I took her pulse, Mark. She was cold and stiff." In 2024, in the podcast Who Killed Jennifer Judd, Justin said once the ambulance arrived, he thought everything would be fine. And I just wanted to say that even though Justin told the 911 dispatcher that an ambulance wasn't needed, one was sent out to the duplex and it was there for between 2 and 4 minutes before they left. In 1992, in his initial statement, Justin then hung up the phone, turned, and punched the wall. A few minutes later, the police and ambulance arrived. While the police were talking to Justin at the scene, Justin told them when Chuck arrived at his work, Chuck had mentioned to Justin that he had gone to his sister's house to change his clothes before he drove out to Justin's work. According to a written statement given by the Alco security guard who worked the shift before Justin, Justin was late for work on the morning Jennifer was murdered. The guard called Justin's home at 6:32 a.m. to see if Justin was on his way. Jennifer answered the phone, and as the guard was speaking with her, he told her he saw Justin's truck come around the corner. He then said, "Never mind, he's there," and then got off the phone with her. When Justin walked into the guard shack, the security guard made comments about Justin just getting back from his honeymoon, being a newly married guy, and coming into work late. And Justin told him no. Jennifer turned off the alarm. The security guard stated Justin wasn't talkative, and they didn't say another word to each other. According to phone records obtained by law enforcement, this 6:32 a.m. phone call is the only phone call placed to the duplex from Alco all day.
When Justin first was interviewed by law enforcement, he told them that he called around 9 o'clock to have Jennifer bring the lunch. The law enforcement did have the cooperation or by warrant. They pulled the records for Alco Chemical where Justin worked, and there was only one phone call made from that company to Justin's home that morning, and it was that call around 6:30.
According to a statement given by a truck driver who was at Justin's work on the day of Jennifer's murder, the driver arrived at Alco at 10:50 a.m. After he pulled his truck onto the scales, he walked into the guard shack to talk with Justin.
That truck driver says that day, because he says he remembers, and that when he went through, he joked with Justin about being newly married, and she was supposed to bring his lunch, and he said, "Well, have her bring me one too." And he went on in after being logged in and emptied his semi out. Whatever he had on fertilizer, I think, is what he had on his semi. And when he went back through the guard shack to log out, Justin was not there. And he asked the person sitting there where Justin was, and the person just said Justin had to leave. Now, Justin's always denied that Justin left.
In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin was asked about that driver's statement. Justin told Garrett the driver was wrong and he was in the guard shack all day. According to a written statement given by the Alco security guard who worked the shift after Justin, the guard arrived at work between 2 and 2:15 p.m. The guard stated Justin changed his clothes before leaving work. He went on to say that a few days after Jennifer's death, he found a figurine in the guard shack. The figurine had a screw on it and said something like, "Knew this was going to happen." On the bottom of the figurine, Justin had written May 11th, 1992. Justin took a leave of absence following Jennifer's murder and hadn't returned to work when the figurine was found. Therefore, it had to be written before he left on the day she was murdered. That figurine was turned in to KBI. In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin was asked why he had written the date on the figurine, and Justin replied, quote, "I saw that someone had written a date on a book, and I just thought I would write the date on this." In the same interview with investigator Garrett, Justin claimed he had no idea if his mom still had a key to the duplex on the day of Jennifer's murder. Justin was also asked about the dream he said Jennifer had had and to explain what he meant when he stated Jennifer had looked like an angel on the morning of her murder. Justin answered, "Everything was just perfect. She was perfect, her hair, her face, everything." According to another truck driver's statement, his personal driver's log documentation had him logging into the guard shack at 1 p.m. on the day of Jennifer's murder. However, according to the Alco guard shack logbook, Justin had the driver arriving at 10 a.m. In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin was questioned about the logbook discrepancies. Justin stated if he had the driver logged in at a particular time, then that is when the driver was there. Justin has always maintained he never left work before his shift ended. Chuck Chance's first police statement was taken at 3:15 p.m. on the afternoon of Jennifer's murder. He has given 4 statements over the years and hasn't given any media interviews. According to Chuck's initial statement, Chuck arrived at Justin's work at 10:40 a.m. Justin told him Jennifer was supposed to have brought him lunch at 10:10 and he didn't know where she was. Justin couldn't figure out why she wasn't there and why she hadn't called. Justin began calling around looking for her. At 2:30, Chuck and Justin left Justin's work and went to his house. When they went inside, Jennifer was lying on the floor with blood all over her. Chuck called 911. After calling 911, Justin and Chuck looked through the house to see what had happened, and then the police showed up. That evening, the police and KBI showed up at Chuck's home. They told him that Justin stated Chuck had told Justin he had gone to his sister's house to change clothes before he drove out to Justin's work. Investigators then began looking through Chuck's house. While investigators were there, Chuck called Justin and asked him why he told the police that. Justin replied, quote, "Well, I thought you did. You better get an attorney." Chuck and Justin had been friends for 2 years. Justin knew Chuck hadn't talked to his sister in months. Chuck's wife at the time told us Chuck couldn't understand why Justin would make up a story like that. Chuck went to the police station the next morning and gave a more detailed statement. In his second statement in 1992, the night before Jennifer's murder, Chuck and his wife had spent the night at her parents' home in Pitcher, Oklahoma. Chuck woke up at 6:30 a.m. According to Chuck's wife, Chuck had told her he planned on dropping off applications and was going to work out with Justin sometime that day. Chuck drove to Commerce, Oklahoma to pick up his gym bag and then arrived at the gym in Miami, Oklahoma at 7:10 a.m. He worked out for about 30 minutes. I would like to add that Justin later stated he thought it was odd Chuck claimed that they were going to work out that day and Chuck worked out that morning. While I'm not trying to sound like I'm defending Chuck, who's to say he only worked on his arms that morning and was going to do his legs later that evening with Justin? Chuck had planned to drop off job applications at 2 places in Pittsburgh, Kansas, located 1 block apart. His route from the gym to Pittsburgh passed through Baxter Springs, and he decided to stop by Justin's duplex. Chuck arrived at 8:15 a.m. As he turned down the street in front of the duplex, he saw a woman standing at the door of the south unit of the Judd's duplex, the empty unit. The lady flagged him down as he turned into the Judd's driveway. The woman asked if this is where the Judds lived. He said yes, and she said she can't raise anyone. Chuck described the lady as 5'8" to 5'9", with curly dark hair that feathered toward the back, brown eyes, wearing a red skirt, floral print blouse, carrying a briefcase. He also noticed a maroon or dark-colored Dodge Shadow parked on 3rd Street, just south of the duplex. He thought the car may have belonged to the lady. Because Justin's truck wasn't there, Chuck left and drove on to Pittsburgh, Kansas. He filled out applications at Superior Will and Hicks Corporation. He then drove back towards Baxter Springs, passing through at around 10:50 to 10:55 a.m., and continued driving to a bank in Commerce, Oklahoma, arriving at 11:15 a.m. He got $5 and put the money in his checking account. He then started to outgo, but realized he forgot to mail his unemployment card. Chuck then went to the post office in Pitcher and then drove to Doane's in Galena, Kansas to apply for a job. He saw a sign posted that they weren't taking applications. Since he was close to Justin's work, he went to Alco and told Justin he was looking for a job and arrived at 11:30 a.m.
Once the police started interrogating him the day of and the day after the murder, they started, according to his, when I interviewed him, according to his statements to me, is that they were grabbing him by the hair, they were manhandling him when they were interviewing him and saying, you're the one, Chuck, you're the one. And he is a macho guy. He didn't take kindly to that. He jumped up and said, I want my attorney. And that's when, of course, the interview stopped.
In January of 1993, Chuck sat down with investigator Mark Garrett against his attorney's advice. The statement Chuck gives Mark is almost exactly the same as his second statement to the police, except Chuck says he went to Doane's after leaving Pittsburgh instead of after the post office. In 1998, in a phone call with Jennifer's mom, Chuck said he arrived at Alco at noon. Returning to his second statement, Chuck stated Justin said he was worried because Jennifer had not shown up with his lunch. Justin said she was supposed to be there at 10:30 a.m. and she wouldn't say she was going to bring it and not do it. Numerous times Justin said something was wrong. Chuck asked Justin if he wanted him to go look for her, and Justin said no, they would look for her together when he got off work. Justin started calling people trying to find out where she was. At 2:30, they left Alco and headed towards the duplex. When they arrived, Justin got out of his truck wearing a weightlifter's glove on his right hand. Justin had his key out but grabbed the doorknob and went in. The door may have been cracked, but Chuck said he couldn't remember. In 1993, Chuck also added that Justin may have called out Jennifer's name when they entered the duplex. He and Justin glanced toward the bedroom and noticed the movie lying on the bed. Chuck stated he and Justin found Jennifer lying on the floor. Justin bent down and felt her cheek. Chuck asked if they should give CPR or something. Justin said no, she's dead. Chuck said he only saw blood underneath her. At first, he thought she had hit her head and then maybe she'd been shot. Justin told Chuck to call 911. When the dispatcher asked for the address, Chuck handed the phone to Justin. After Justin hung up the phone, he hit the wall. Justin stepped over Jennifer's body, walked over to the boxes that were stacked up near the fridge. The boxes had been tipped over. In 1998, in a phone call with Jennifer's mom, Chuck told her that Justin looked all around the boxes as if looking for something, then straightened the boxes up. In 1992, Justin kept saying what's happened. Chuck noticed the knives and reached out and brushed his hand across them and said, look at these sticking up. Justin said, yeah, they were like that. In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin stated that Chuck never asked about the knives sticking up. In 1992, in his second statement, Chuck stated Justin then walked into the bedroom, turned the light on, and sat on the bed. Chuck grabbed him to comfort him. Chuck heard the police and ran out to the porch. When the police came in, Justin was sitting in the recliner. Investigators later found the glove Justin had been wearing stuffed under the chair cushion. Sheetrock dust was found on the outside of the glove.
Justin drives home and puts the glove on his hand before he goes in the house. Well, then he takes that glove off, and a police officer finds it in the seat, kind of snuffed down one side of a cushion of the seat in the living room.
In 1998, in an interview with investigator Garrett, Justin stated he never entered the bedroom. In 1998, in a conversation between Justin and Jennifer's mom, she asked Justin why he moved the boxes stacked next to the fridge and then ran into the bedroom. Justin stated he didn't remember there being any boxes and he never entered the bedroom. In 1998, in a phone call with Jennifer's mom, Chuck stated Justin had bent over and picked something up off the floor before heading to the bedroom. Jennifer's mom asked Chuck why Justin stated he never went into the bedroom, and Chuck said they had. Chuck answered that everything was so confusing and Justin was so upset that maybe Justin got confused. An eyewitness saw Chuck entering the fitness center stairway at around 7 to 7:15 a.m. And another witness saw Chuck at the post office at 11:30 a.m. Chuck and his attorney obtained statements from the two businesses in Pittsburgh verifying that Chuck had filled out the applications on the morning of Jennifer's murder. Police questioned a neighbor 2 doors down from the duplex on the afternoon of Jennifer's murder. That neighbor stated he woke up between 8:30 and 9. He said that around 10:45 and 10:50, while watching the last showcase on The Price is Right, he saw a white Geo pull onto his street. He didn't see where it went, but it didn't pull into his or his neighbor's driveway, and since the street is a dead end, he assumed it went to Jennifer's duplex. The car stayed there for 10 to 15 minutes tops and then drove away. He couldn't ID the person but said it was a male. As the neighbor made the statement to police, he stepped out onto his porch and said, "And that's the car there," pointing to Chuck's Geostorm in Jennifer and Justin's driveway.
We've got too many people placing Chuck's car there. So Chuck says, of course, whoever says they see my car there more than that time I gave you is lying. Of course, obviously, he's going to say that if he's involved. We have 4 actually witnesses that seen that car on that street that morning from 8 o'clock in the morning till noon. One of them being the person who the police took an interview of, because when Jennifer was found, they went 2 houses down, and the person who lives there, whenever they came to his door, they asked him if he had seen anything happening down 2 houses down. He said, "Yeah, I mean," he said, "I seen a car down there." And he come out onto the doorstep, and he says, "That same car that I seen then is down there right now."
Now, that vehicle that many witnesses placed in the neighborhood, off and on between 8 and noon, was Justin, the husband's best friend's Geostorm car with special pinstriping up the side, so it was unique.
According to a neighbor who lived near the duplex, she told Jennifer's mom that on the day of the murder, she was questioned by police. She told them she had gotten back from the grocery store between 11:30 and 11:45 a.m. As she was unloading her car, she saw a Geo parked at the duplex. The police told her she had to be wrong about the time by an hour. The police insisted she must have seen the car closer to 10:30. She insisted she was correct on the time because she had to be home before noon. Because the police didn't like the time, they didn't want her statement. According to a written statement given by a truck driver, a Geo sped past the truck driver as he was driving down 5th Street toward the intersection at Military Road in Baxter Springs at around 11:30 a.m. When the truck driver pulled into Alco at noon, the Geo was parked next to the guard shack. That's a lot of geospiding on that day. We also want to give you the recorded times Justin logged truck drivers in and out of Alco during his 6:30 to 2:30 shift on the day of Jennifer's murder. There was a driver that checked in at 8:45 and out at 8:50, 9:15
Okay.
to 9:20,
Okay.
9:20 to 9:30,
30,
10:10 no out,
10,
10:25 to 10:45,
5,
10:50, 11:40,
10:50, 11:40,
12 o'clock to 12:40,
12 to 12:40.
and that's all during his hours. According to the driver who Justin logged in at 10:10 with no out, this driver's personal log had him checked in at 1 p.m., not 10:10 as Justin wrote down. And we know of another driver's statement that a truck driver saw Justin at 10:50, but Justin was not in the guard shack when that driver left at 11:40. That leaves two gaps that we know of that Justin potentially was not seen at the guard shack, and those are between the 9:30 a.m. logout and a 10:25 login, and shortly after the 10:50 login and a noon login. And the reason why we're bringing this to your attention is according to Chuck's second ex-wife, his mom, and another witness, Chuck said Justin borrowed his car that day, and that info was turned in to Chuck's attorney. Justin didn't live in the duplex following Jennifer's murder and didn't want any of the furniture. Jennifer and Justin's family packed up and moved the items into storage.
Shortly after the murder, in the process of moving, Justin didn't want anything in the house. He said he didn't want one thing. And they moved all that furniture from the duplex after the murder, from the duplex to their home. And during that process, Justin's parents, Bobby Judd and Pam Judd, had told them that on the morning of the murder, that they both had been by the house that morning. And the mother said that she was at the house on the corner picking up a coworker that she supervised and took to like different motels in the vicinity there, in the area, to clean up, the motel rooms, et cetera, et cetera. Pam Judd said, it's a wonder I didn't see Chuck there, because they were around the same time. Now her husband, Bobby Judd, Justin's stepfather, placed himself there around noon. He said that he had went to a place called Cherokee Metal, and that to pick up some metal, because he also worked in metal. And he drove by that morning on 3rd Street and looked down the street, which would only been about 40 or 50 feet from the 3rd Street to where Jennifer lived. He said he seen Jennifer's car there, and he decided not to stop because Justin wasn't home. So those two placed themselves in the vicinity of the murder on the day of the murder. Then they backtracked on those statements later on. When I interviewed Chuck, I asked him, but since I knew already that the mother and the father had been there, I asked him, was the woman that he seen at the duplex, was it Justin's mother? And his answer, and I've asked him this several times since then, the lady that you see at the door, at the other duplex door, was that person, Justin's mother, Pam Judd. And he says, this is his answer verbatim. If it was, she was wearing a wig. Now, I said, Chuck, you've been around Justin. You're one of his best friends. You've been at the home with him, where him and his parents live. And you know whether Pam Judd had a wig on or had no wig on. You know whether that was Pam Judd. was it Pam Judd again? And his answer always was the same. If it was, she was wearing a wig. The mother placed herself there with Jennifer's mother, like I said, when moving this furniture out of the duplex, that she was there at the corner picking up an employee to go work at motels. Well, she even named the employee's name, which we would have never known that. It took me 8 years to find that person. 8 years it took me to find that person. And when I interviewed her, she said that that morning that she was taken to school, she was still in high school, and when she got out of school, that she walked down the tracks. That's when she seen the police all there, and she said she remembers that day very vividly because there were so many people there. Well, come to find out, when I asked her, I said, did you meet Pam Judd that morning? Did you see Pam Judd that morning? Did she pick you up? And she said, I didn't even know Pam Judd then. I was still in school. I didn't meet Pam until the next month. Then I met her and started doing this subcontract work cleaning motels. She said, if Pam Judd says she was at our house, my house, she's lying because she was not at my house. I wasn't even there. I was in school. And she says, I got records to show I was in school. So why did she place herself there that morning? And Bobby could say, well, I told her I was there around noon in my car. But one thing, see, they reneged on those statements. They said they never made those statements to Debbie and Dale, the mothers and father of the victim. Well, I've got signed sworn statements says they did say it.
And honestly, Debbie wouldn't have known those people or the person on the corner. Like, she wouldn't have been able to just, fabricate those details about what she was told.
Jennifer's duplex was right across the street from the Baxter Springs city barn where they work on the vehicles. And two employees, I have signed statements from two employees that they were informed by their superior to go across the street where Jennifer lived, because across the street was the dog pound. Then there was a space in between the dog pound, and I'm talking about a very small space, 25 to 30 feet wide. And then you had Jennifer's duplex. So they were told to go over there, get some metal that they had stored over there, that they need to make some project they had at the barn. They needed to make something with metal. So they went over there. Now, this would have never been probably uncovered because law enforcement never even interviewed one person from the city barn. And I interviewed 3 of them. And 2 of the employees that were sent over there to get that metal told me that her car, and the reason why they know is because the next day after the murder, Jennifer's car was inside the city barn, and they were told right off the bat when they came to work, don't touch it, don't mess with it. It's the police confiscated on a murder from yesterday. And the employees, the 2 employees that were sent over there the previous day, said, well, that car wasn't even over there. He said, when we went over there at 10 o'clock that morning, that car was gone.
One of these employees also stated that the police stored Jennifer's car at the city barn after her murder. The employee said he had looked into the back of Jennifer's car and saw someone's lunch. Jennifer's sister Amanda had a tanning appointment after school on the day of Jennifer's murder. When she arrived at 3:30 p.m., no one at the tanning salon told her that Jennifer hadn't shown up for her 1 p.m. tanning appointment.
If Jennifer couldn't keep an appointment, she would cancel it. She had never done a no-show before. The people who owned the tanning salon were friends of Jennifer's family, and they knew who she was. I'm wondering, did they say anything to you about Jennifer having an appointment at 1 o'clock?
No.
Would that be
No.
weird?
Yes. So after school that day, I went to the same tanning salon to tan. I mean, sadly, we lived there. We tanned all the time. But it was just a block from our house. And these were, family friends. And the lady that ran the beauty shop was a second mother to us our entire life. And
It wasn't until after Jennifer's murder that police got the phone records from the duplex and saw the phone call made at 9:52 to the owners of the tanning salon. Police went to the home and asked about the phone call.
The owner's son, who had answered the call, asked the police, "Are you here about Jennifer's accident?" And the police answered, "Son, this was no accident. Jennifer was murdered."
Nothing. I didn't know anything until like maybe later that evening or the next couple of days till some of the information came out that she had called to schedule a tanning appointment. So there really wasn't a book. There wasn't they would just look and see if there was, because they treated us like their daughters. So they would look and see if there's an opening, oh yeah, come and tan at 3:00 or come and tan at 4:00 or whatever. And so I wouldn't have had there wouldn't have been anything there that day that would have told me or that I would have seen that would have verified that there actually was a call made to go tan. We know there was a call made, but nobody except for her and Billy, their son, knows if that truly was what the call was about.
Do you think that he would have recognized her voice?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They grew up like brother and sister. We were all raised together in church together. Our families, we went out and ate on Saturday nights together. We went out every Sunday night after church for dinner. So he would have known it was her calling for sure. But I've had people tell me though, that they don't, how do we really know that what if she called for help? I don't know. Do we really know that she called to tan? No, nobody's really been able to verify that. Because here's the other thing. If she's going to go tan and then she had to go to work at the Picture Express, I've always wondered that too is, I don't like to tan and then I would never get up in the mornings and go tan and then go to work because I'm going to smell like the tanning bed all day long. So it's just one of those strange things that you look back and you want to think that she actually really called to tan, but I don't know that we really know that.
And then I can also tell you what Justin told me today that I went down there. I had to go to the police department because Justin was being interviewed. And I had never met Justin. I felt sorry for the guy. I didn't know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go there to get the key. I went there with the victim's mother's brother, and we went there to get the key from Justin. Well, Justin came out. He brought the key. And I hugged him and I said, "I'm really sorry to hear about your newlywed that Jennifer was murdered. That's a terrible thing to have to face 9 days after marrying somebody." He says, "Well, they think they say I need to be a cop." He said, that's what he said. He said, "They think I need to be a police officer." Well, when I left and went to the house, I noticed his father's truck was parked about 3 blocks away looking at our direction. I know Bobby Judd because I'm from that area. He knew that they've got a big problem with me. I knew that. Now, when I went there on the bed, there was a bunch of documents and you could tell that Justin was looking for insurance. It was all spread out over the bed. And we found out that he thought that he did have insurance. Justin thought that he had insurance, but what he really filled out at work was health insurance, not life insurance.
Justin ended up filing a death claim on Jennifer with his health insurance company,
which was denied.
A few days after Jennifer's murder, one of Jennifer's best friends gave KBI a letter Jennifer had written to her. The friend turned it in because she wanted them to know that Jennifer and Justin had a rocky relationship. When Justin found out what Jennifer's friend had done, he told her, "When someone gives evidence to the police and she is killed, the evidence won't hold up in court," and to tell him what she said.
He then told her she had better lock her house and she'd better have a gun. After that conversation, the friend stayed at a relative's home out of town. When she returned home 2 weeks later, Justin called her and told her next time she left, she had better be gone longer than 2 weeks.
For 8 months, Jennifer's family suspected that Chuck had killed Jennifer. In January of 1993, investigator Mark Garrett sat down and talked to Chuck against the advice of his attorney.
The day that I interviewed Chuck, less than a year after the murder, when I interviewed Chuck, I done it at a Pizza Hut in Baxter Springs, Kansas. When I interviewed Chuck, unbeknownst to us, a girl working there parents were close friends to the Judds. Before I even got home, which was a 20-minute drive, I was getting threats on my life. Chuck wife had been called, and she was getting threats, and he was getting threats on his life because they found out that I interviewed Chuck. Why would you have to ask this very logical question? Why would the father-in-law of a murdered daughter-in-law be upset with me conducting an interview with Chuck, whom he even has thrown under the bus? It's because he's afraid. He doesn't know what Chuck told me is what he's afraid of. Now, I can tell you this, that on the day of the funeral, that morning, Bobby Judd, the stepfather, went to Chuck Chance's house with a gun. And when he went there, he asked Chuck to step outside the house. And he told Chuck, "You do not go to that funeral. They do not want you there." Well, the family never said anything about him not showing up. Nobody in our family said he could not show up. We didn't even know what was going on. But they didn't want him there, because I tell you why. It done just what it done. It made him look suspicious by not showing up.
And just to clarify, because it's when you tell that story about the threats on your life, as he was riding home from the interview or just walking in the door from interviewing Chuck, that was one-on-one directly Bobby Judd calling my dad. That was not hearsay. That was him calling my dad, telling him, "I am going to effing kill you."
Now, see, he has that ability to scare people because he does it. He done it the day of the murder because at the crime scene, the undersheriff come over there and said, "Well, we need to take this truck because that's the truck Justin drove, because we need to take it in for forensics." And Bobby said, "You ain't taking that truck nowhere."
Around this time, the police decided to do another search around and in the duplex. They also checked the baseboard under the hole Justin punched in the wall.
This caused the relationship between Jennifer and Justin's family to deteriorate.
Unsolved Mysteries asked to do an episode on Jennifer's murder. Justin, as Jennifer's next of kin, told them no,
although he later denied saying that.
He also began to distance himself from the Justice for Jennifer campaign. He stated in the 2024 podcast, Who Killed Jennifer Judd, that the campaign focused too much on the person who committed the crime and that the group had pushed the killer into a corner and would never talk.
Although he did help hang up reward signs.
And even my mom was telling me the story about him laughing and mocking us for having the Justice for Jennifer t-shirts and the Justice for Jennifer bumper stickers. And, we did all of those fundraisers to raise the money, which it paid for a lot of what Mark did over the years, which has just been incredible for the case. And, on the other podcast where he made the comment about it was a mockery, we were making a mockery of what happened to her. And I'm like, it made me think of that night when he looked at me in the eyeball that night and told me that it wasn't going to matter. Like he had already moved on with his life and he didn't need to help us find justice and he didn't need to help us, solve the case because it wasn't going to matter for him. And, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's one thing to think it, but sometimes when you say things out loud.
According to the KBI cold case agent in charge of Jennifer's case, Justin has never contacted them for an update.
Because I don't, and he insults me and he calls me this name and you're stupid. You don't know how to investigate. That's okay.
Who
I
does that?
know, Justin. Tell me.
Justin.
Huh?
Justin. That's
Justin.
insane.
Yeah, and it's
I know.
these are all screenshots. Now I saved these screenshots of Justin, and I know Justin. Help me investigate this. You know who's
Right.
done a good investigation. Help me. We'll solve this. It's your wife.
Right.
I just let it go in one ear and out the other because he can insult me all he wants. Last time I contacted the KBI and asked this question, it was 10 years after the murder. And my question was to the head of the KBI, that cold case unit, have you ever had Justin call your office and ask you, is there anything new on the case? And he said, no, that he has never called.
It rained on the day of Jennifer's murder and a muddy footprint was found near her body. However, the crime scene was never properly cordoned off.
So Bobby Judd, I guess, made the decision. I don't know if he was working for the Crawford County or Baxter Springs or what at that point, but he made the decision to get in his vehicle and go get my mother at Quapaw Schools, which was probably 15 minutes away, and drive her to the crime scene. And she walks up there, and and I don't know if it had quit raining or not. It had been raining, and she walks up there. And she has to, they're standing, there's police officers coming in and out. Their feet are dirty and muddy and nasty. And she walks up to the door and there's an officer up there and she says, I need to get in and check on my daughter. And they're like, who are you? And she's like, well, I'm Debbie Bryan. That's my daughter, Jennifer. And I need to get in and check on her. Is she in there? And he's like, ma'am, I'm sorry, but your daughter's deceased. And, she's there all by herself. And I just to this day, I've always wondered if the KBI had been called in and if that crime scene had been contained like it should have been contained and we didn't have all those officers in and out that whole day. Out of all those people, I don't know why Bobby Judd was the elected official or the elected person out of that team. If that's truly how they handle things, why was he the one to contact Jennifer's family? How is it that all Justin's family knew about it and nobody from Jennifer's family knew about it? It's always been troubling to me. So my poor mother had to stand there and watch all those people trample in and out, people sitting down on their brand new furniture that they had just gotten a couple of weeks ago, laughing, carrying on. And here she is all by herself. And they end up taking him to the Baxter Springs Police Department. By that time, I think one of my uncles, her brother, he worked at the school with her as well, too. And then once he found out what happened, I think he got in the car and drove down there eventually and was there with her until we got to the police station that night, my dad and I.
There is not a state in the state of the United States that doesn't require thorough training of police officers. And in that thorough training of police officers, I know beyond a doubt that every state goes over the proper procedures for working a crime scene. You rope it off, you restrict anybody from going in until the person working the case arrives. And that they didn't do. I know they knew what to do. They just didn't do it. They were too busy showing all their buddies and friends what happened. And actually, it's very sad. Debbie's brother, Jennifer's uncle, was there on that day after Jennifer was found murdered. And he said it made him very sick to see all these officers running around there smiling. Surely they weren't smiling about Jennifer. They were in the being able to see this stuff that they don't get to see. He said it literally made me sick that they were smiling and my niece was laying in there murdered and they're out here letting everybody in and out. He said, I could have walked up in there and went right in there. He said, I seen it happen so many times that day I was there.
No viable fingerprints were found on the lunch in Jennifer's car or on the soda can found tipped over on the bedroom floor. Because of the witnesses who came forward saying they saw Gio near the duplex during the morning of Jennifer's murder,
Chuck placing himself at the duplex on that morning,
and Justin's claim that Chuck had changed his clothes prior to arriving at Justin's work, Chuck became the main suspect.
So multiple witnesses saw that car in and out of the neighborhood between 8 and noon that day. And the police did get some of those statements about his car. And unfortunately, that also led the police to have complete tunnel vision. From that point forward, there was no possibility that anyone else could have been in the car. They wouldn't entertain that at all. It was just Chuck was the killer and the best friend. And that was where they just wouldn't hear or look at anything else. So anyway, and Chuck did say in his interview with my dad that I did not do this, but if I go down, I'm taking a lot of people with me. So he made that statement in person directly to my dad, which showed what we always knew. He knows what happened to Jennifer. And the fact that they scoffed him and pissed him off from the very beginning, that is why this case was never solved, because he held the key and he lawyered up as soon as they started manhandling him or trying to. And everybody's always thought, because the police thought that he done it, he's been basically labeled the murderer this entire time. We're the only ones, which is why he probably sat down and talked to my dad, that never felt like he was the actual killer.
On May 13th, police confiscated sneakers and a t-shirt, both having blood spots from Chuck's house.
The blood on the shoes was proven to be fish blood, and the blood on the t-shirt was Chuck's. Furthermore, hair and blood samples and finger and palm prints taken from the scene did not match Chuck's.
Chuck's attorney was able to get statements from the businesses in Pittsburgh stating he had been there on the morning of Jennifer's murder and turned in his statement that Justin had used his car.
Regardless, in a 2009 article, Gary Allen, former Baxter Springs police chief and a Cherokee County sheriff's deputy, stated Chuck was still a suspect and hadn't been charged because of lack of evidence.
According to the 2024 podcast, Who Killed Jennifer Judd, Justin is 99.99% sure that Chuck did it because he'd always had a secret crush on her.
So hypothetically, I imagine something like this. Chuck has a crush on Jennifer. He tells his wife he's going to drop off some applications in Pittsburgh. And as he's driving back through Baxter Springs, he decides to see Jennifer.
So she lets him in.
He makes a pass.
She tells him no.
So he hits and stabs her to death. And then just for kicks, he decides to make Justin's lunch and stash it in Jennifer's car.
Chuck then thinks, I'm going to hang out with Jennifer's husband all day.
While at Alco, Justin says he's worried about Jennifer.
Chuck offers to drive over to check on her, but thankfully he says no.
But it doesn't matter, because Chuck must have done it, because Justin says his friend of 2 years has a secret crush on Jennifer, and Chuck was dumb enough to tell him he changed his clothes at his sister's house before going up to Alco.
And Chuck just couldn't stop driving by the duplex that morning.
Next. In 2005, KBI began looking into serial killer Jeremy Jones.
Jones was 18 when Jennifer was murdered and had gone to school in Miami and Quapaw.
Jones was convicted and is currently sitting on death row for the 2004 rape and murder of a woman in Mobile County, Alabama. Prior to the murder conviction, Jones had also been convicted and accused of multiple rapes. While in the Alabama jail, Jones confessed to killing at least 13 people, I've read possibly 21, spanning 12 years in Oklahoma, Kansas, Georgia, Louisiana, and Alabama.
Alabama authorities stated Jones identified Jennifer as his first victim. Jones said he stalked, tried to rape, and then stabbed Jennifer to death. However, he said he only stabbed her in the back. Couldn't describe the clothes she was wearing. Said she lived in the south unit of the duplex. Had no specific details of the crime. Didn't know where the knives were located. How he got into the duplex. The time of day or how he got there. The information he gave to the authorities was all available in the papers. KBI traveled to Alabama and interviewed him several times and stated there was no evidence he did it.
The KBI went out there, and even we were invited out there, me and Shauna, this was when they had Jeremy Jones in custody,
We went
in
there.
Mobile, Alabama. We went there, and we were invited there. I can tell you that officer there, the head guy there, thinks that he's right, but
Yeah.
he don't know my case.
Jones later claimed that his confessions were lies to get special meals, phone privileges, and meetings with his mom and girlfriend.
Despite what was said in the 2024 podcast, Who Killed Jennifer Judd, Jennifer did not know Jones. She had never dated Jones. She wasn't having an affair with Jones.
I can't be okay with something that portrayed or painted my sister in the light that they chose to do. She wasn't having affairs with other people. She trusted the people that were in and out of her apartment in those short 9 days of her marriage. She trusted those people. And, it's just, looking back on it now, I don't know, maybe, in the future, maybe it'll come to a point that maybe when they go back and re-listen to it, maybe there'll be some regret there in that if they truly were in it for the right reasons, that maybe they would have made sure that Jennifer's family and her closest friends were okay with it as well.
Right.
Regardless, hypothetically, maybe it went something like this.
Jones shows up at the duplex.
And ignoring the stranger danger warnings, Jennifer lets him in. He looks like a nice guy.
He makes a pass and hits her before she puts up any fight.
No defensive wounds.
He then stabs her to death.
Even though he has all the time in the world in that secluded duplex, Jones, the serial rapist, decides, nah, he'll pass this time.
He also decides not to strangle, rob her like he does his next victim.
Because, this is his first murder and he hasn't finessed his MO quite yet.
And even though this is his first murder, and typically a serial killer remembers the details of their first, he doesn't.
So next we have this husband.
Statistically, the person most likely to commit a crime of passion, especially where a murder weapon from the home was used.
And according to a 2009 article, Gary Allen, former Baxter Springs police chief and a Cherokee County sheriff's deputy, stated, Justin was cleared of any involvement. And according to the 2024 podcast, Who Killed Jennifer Judd, the host said he didn't do it. Justin looks truthful. Hypothetically, I imagine something like this. Justin calls Jennifer at 9:30.
Or maybe 6:32.
Or maybe sometime between 8:30 and 9. It depends on who he's talking to. But we have an Alco employee also saying he made the phone call at 6:32 because Justin was late to work.
So we have two people who both claim to have made the same phone call. One of them's lying.
Clearly the employee. Why would Justin? He looks truthful.
So let's say Jennifer knew to bring Justin his lunch.
Wifely intuition. This particular time, she decides to not use the insulated cooler that she made a very big deal about using to keep Justin's lunch fresh.
Because less than 2 weeks before the murder, Jennifer had contacted her dad and said, Justin takes his lunch in a sack every day. And she says, I hate that. And I tell him he needs to get a lunch bucket and he won't do it. Her dad gave her a lunch bucket for Justin. And we know the fact that the way she acted about his lunch,
sack.
if she would have made that lunch that day, she would not have sent it in a paper sack.
She leaves the knife she used to spread the mayo out and does not wash it, which, according to her friends, was unlike her.
She was tidy, but she's in a hurry.
Jennifer puts the baggies of lunch in the car without leaving her own fingerprints on it.
She's good.
Hold on, Jennifer's found dead in the kitchen. It is speculated she forgot something, such as the movie that needed to be returned, so she quickly runs back inside to grab it.
Well, not too quickly, because she brings her purse back inside with her, puts it on the counter, then heads to the bedroom to grab the movie, leaving all the lights off.
Then we have the truck driver. According to his statement,
And this statement is detailed.
the driver arrived at 10:50.
He talks to Justin about the wedding and the honeymoon. Justin said his wife was supposed to have brought his lunch, and the driver says, have her bring me lunch too.
And then 40 to 50 minutes later, as the driver is leaving, Justin's not in the guard shack.
Now, Justin says that is not true. He never left the shack, even though Justin could have said he had been in the bathroom or went to a vending machine.
Justin made it clear he did not leave.
This driver, who was no particular friend of Justin and only knew him from work, clearly had it in for Justin.
That's 2 inconsistencies and 2 lies. When Chuck shows up at Justin's work, Justin repeatedly says he is worried about her.
Reality check. I have been told if Jennifer was late with his lunch, he wouldn't have been worried. He would have been pissed off. When Jennifer was worried about going home alone after work, Jennifer's dad followed her home, not Justin.
Regardless, Justin states repeatedly he is worried about Jennifer. Chuck offers to drive 10 minutes away and check on her.
Justin says no, but go get me a sandwich. I mean, come on, it's lunchtime.
Justin calls Jennifer's grandma.
But he doesn't call Jennifer's parents or his own mom, who has a damn key. And when the guard working the next shift arrives at 2 to 2:15, and Justin finally has the opportunity to check on the love of his life and drive like a bat out of hell to check on her, he changes his clothes first. The guard check logbook is not accurate with personal driver's logs between 9:30 and 10:50, and Justin left the shack sometime after 10:50 but was back by noon.
And according to Chuck, Justin did drive his car.
That gave Justin multiple opportunities to drive to the duplex, hence all the sightings of the GO.
But he's been cleared, and he looks truthful.
Yes, he does.
And then according to every single person we've talked to, there's the person Jennifer had the most problems with.
Her mother-in-law.
She puts herself at the duplex on the morning of Jennifer's murder at the same time Chuck sees a lady there.
Of course, she later denies it.
So hypothetically, maybe Justin calls his mom to bring him lunch. Making Justin's lunch closer to Alco would make sense, and she has a key to the duplex. While she's there, she can also fold laundry, hang up his clothes, and clean.
Jennifer could have left to run an errand, and when she returned, her mother-in-law was in the house. Maybe they got into a fight.
And what about Justin's stepdad threatening Chuck more than once for talking to investigators?
Why? Why wouldn't you want the person you say killed your stepson's wife questioned? Why would Justin's stepdad threaten an investigator for questioning the person who he thinks killed his stepson's wife? Why would Justin threaten his wife's best friends for talking to investigators? Why would Justin allegedly not want Unsolved Mysteries to do an episode on his wife's murder? Why didn't the judge let investigators search Justin's truck on the day of her murder? Why? To lots of things.
At 10:50, according to a truck driver's statement, Justin was already stating Jennifer was late with his lunch, a lunch she wouldn't have known to bring if she was never called.
That leads me to think by 10:50, Justin may have known his wife was dead.
That would rule out Jones as a suspect.
Unless he called Justin afterward.
And probably Chuck.
Unless Chuck showed up and was like, bro, I accidentally killed your wife. And Justin's like, okay, let's wait until 2:30 and then I'll throw you under the bus. These are obviously made-up scenarios. We have no idea what happened that day. But I will say, if there truly is a full DNA profile of the murderer, as stated on Who Killed Jennifer Judd, then that profile should be submitted to a DNA genetic lab. Genetic profiling is something that can be done to help identify unidentified remains. They extract genetic markers from unidentified remains, and forensic geneticists then find distant relatives, narrowing it down further and further. It's so precise, an image of what that person looks like can be made with hair and eye color. Do the same thing with this DNA. Take the DNA genetic markers and establish a suspect genetic profile. If we are to assume the murderer isn't in CODIS, then find them through family trees and generate a suspect reconstruction image. 17 months ago, Jennifer's family contacted us to do her case.
Life got in the way and our podcast was put on hold.
We have tremendous guilt over that. A few months ago, we started looking at Jennifer's case again, and we found out another podcast was being done on her.
So we waited until that one was finished before filming ours.
I'm very glad we did. After listening to Who Killed Jennifer Judd, we couldn't be further apart on our views.
And I reached out to them and told them that I had talked to you guys and that I felt like it was the right thing to do. And just so we can make sure that, we want Jennifer's story. We want justice. And like I said, I'm not, if an arrest is made tomorrow, then, I'm going to be on the front row, at the court every single day. And it's just been tough. And I'm, hopefully maybe, when this gets out and the other side of the story is told, and maybe it gives mom a little bit of comfort or relief. She's hurt because of the lack of communication from the Cherokee County, of them even just picking the phone up and say, here's what's going on. There's just been absolutely nothing.
We can't tell you who killed Jennifer Judd. We can't tell you why Jennifer was murdered. We know something led to a physical altercation.
She was hit, turned her back on the assailant, and was beaten.
Then the coward stabbed her in her back. And yes, that person was a coward. A coward to stab an unarmed 110-pound woman in the back 3 times.
One of those stab wounds dissected her heart, killing her within minutes.
That 8 1/4-inch bruise has puzzled me. It is too wide and short to be the edge of the counter. It's positioned right above the embedded knife blade. I believe when Jennifer fell to the ground, her killer stepped on her back to remove the knife, and it broke off. 8 1/4 inches long.
Roughly the size of a woman's foot.
Or a man with a dainty foot.
She was then rolled over onto her back, and she bled to death. And after she had taken her dying breath, she was stabbed 6 more times.
Why do we know she was dead before those last 6 stabs?
She had no blood in her esophagus or mouth. The 10 ounces of blood that was collected in the lung pooled there and was never breathed in.
There was also no blood on her front or on her white bra that had been slashed through. The stabs were in a row, which means she didn't squirm around.
These stabs happened after she died.
We agree with the statement. It is obvious that this was an attack or an overkill by someone who hated or despised this lady. I would add, probably done by someone who claimed to have loved her. She was loved to death.
As we stated at the beginning, we're not detectives. We can't tell you who killed Jennifer Judd. All we can do is give you the evidence and statements.
Facts don't change, and some of those closest to Jennifer have repeatedly changed their story.
We have given you what we know.
This was Jennifer's story.